that talks about the history of regional hospital boards and the regional hospital specifics here. Normally at an inaugural meeting, you might elect a chair and a co-chair, or vice chair for a regional hospital district. But in our case, apparently in the act, there's a specific clause that talks about the mayor taking on the role of chair of the regional hospital district in our case. So that's why I'm sitting here and we're not doing some kind of election. And I'm happy to do that. So that's kicking off the meeting. In the welcome, we acknowledge that the Northern Rockies Administration Center is located in the heart of the traditional territories of the Dene, Cree, and Dunaza peoples of the Prophet River and Fort Nelson First Nations. We further recognize the rights provided by our treaty. Finally, we celebrate the contributions and the enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that today's meeting is available to attend. I guess maybe it's not available to attend today, but it will be recorded and posted. I have no additions to the agenda. Does council have any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, does the CAO have any additions to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Souls, second by Councillor Dickey. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Because the public can't stream in today. Yeah, well, I guess if they can join by Zoom if they had but I don't think there's anybody there, so we can skip over that. Let's move directly to reports. 5.1 is the RHD inaugural meeting and procedure bylaw review. I think all of you have it in front of you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Barry to start the discussion on the who may indeed turn it over to someone.
I'm going to indeed turn it over to Jaylene, but no thanks. As you'd mentioned, this is our inaugural meeting. This is the first time that the council, or in this case, the Regional Hospital District Board, has met in this manner. The intent today is to start going through some of this and building, I guess, due process through the procedure piece through council, so we can eventually bring a bylaw back to council, or in this case, the board. Jay's going to walk you through that. The intent today is not to have necessarily at all but I want to have a discussion as part of this today and bring it back here in short order once we get some direction and allow council to have some time to consider things. Now let's hand it over to you, Jay, if you're good.
Yep. So there's the report before you kind of summarizes some of the first orders of business for council to consider in the establishment of Northern Rockies Regional Hospital District Board. So one is the procedure bylaw, which you guys are going to be so tired of hearing about procedure bylaws by the time this day is over. But it's it essentially formalizes how council, or sorry, how the board in this instance conducts its business and holds its meetings. So for the most part, in developing the draft that's attached to the agenda, it was done as a simplified version of the existing procedure bylaw for regional council. Also taking into consideration some of the examples from other communities of their hospital district boards. And then also where there are differences between a municipalities or a council's procedures and a regional hospital district board's procedures. One of the best examples of that is that a municipal council has to separate the readings and adoption of their bylaws, whereas a hospital district through the act is permitted to read and adopt all in one meeting. So the draft bylaw has been attached for your review and discussion. We also the board, I'm gonna have to get used to that. The board will have to establish their regular meetings for the year, their calendar of regular meetings for the year. And then also to look at some potential meeting dates in February as we know, there will need to be at least one special meeting this year to review the capital funding request from Northern Health, the final one, prior to the adoption of our hospital district board budget bylaw. So do you want to proceed in just reviewing the draft bylaw, or I'm not sure how you'd like
Yeah,
to-
so I guess I'll ask the board if there are any overview questions, I guess, or general questions about the process. So there's really 3 points in the report that I think we need to cover, and we don't necessarily need to cover them all today. For this board, the reason I don't want to go through the procedure bylaws because it's a reflection of our procedure bylaw, which we're going to be talking about this afternoon. So the point of this really is we had to have this meeting at some time. The only thing that I saw in there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. McIver, is the bit about meeting at noon, which is part of our meeting schedule. So that would be the only thing we need to resolve or to say that we're going to do today, and it would automatically get added in. And then at the next regional hospital board meeting, you would have it all completed and we would be able to, which we're tentatively trying to set for February. It's only a month away.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a quarterly meeting where we have to wait before we do our procedure bylaw. We'll probably get it done fairly quickly. Okay, so if everybody's okay with that, then let's just move to 2, which is the establishment of board meetings and the time. So is noon okay? Well, we have 4 or 5 of us here. Is this time of day okay for the board to have its meeting? On the same day as a council meeting?
Just as long as it's wrapped up by 1 o'clock. I have to leave usually at 1.
Right. My experience with board meetings is they're not really that long unless you really start getting into the detail of a particular budget thing or project, right? I guess that's my history with the Peace River Regional District Board, and they dealt with a lot of stuff there. So, but they were short meetings. And we did those just before the regular meeting on Thursday mornings. So we were able to fit it in fairly well. There was the odd one that went a little longer. Okay. So I think we're taking notes about that. So Mondays on a regular council meeting day. My question is, with respect to how many meetings a year and when they're timed, is they should be timed so that they sort of coincide with what Northern Health is coming, right? So if they're coming to us with a budget request, we should probably be having, well, do we need to know about that? I'm thinking we should know before, but they're going to want us to do it after, right?
Yeah, so we know, so Northern Health has been fairly consistent in providing their quarterly status updates. And so in terms of timing, we usually receive a provisional budget request from Northern Health by end of November annually, because we need to adopt our provisional bylaw before the end of December. So you can expect that there should be something to see in December. And then of course, the final budget request comes in the spring. So before the end of the first quarter. So in terms of information from Northern Health that requires a decision, December, and I would say March would be when you expect to see material from them. And then the other, if you're looking at quarterly potential, that's at your discretion.
So I'm hearing for sure 2 meetings. One would be because if there's a decision to be made about provisional budget in December, it's only 1 meeting. You just said we're already going to do the meeting. So there'll be at least 1 meeting in December of the regional hospital board.
Okay.
And you said the other one is we get information in March. So would that make it April?
So, and that's my question to Northern Health for this February special meeting is there going to be material to review? And whether it's formalized or it's a discussion, I'm not sure yet. So but you have to have your you have to have your final budget adopted for the RHD. I think it's March 31st, is it not? Yeah. So we would have to have something from them before the end of March to get the budget bylaw adopted.
So then the second meeting in March makes sense for a regional hospital
District meeting.
district meeting.
Yeah.
You're giving them as much time as they are allowed for us to actually then have some time to deal with it before the March 31st meeting. So those are the two times that you're telling us. So is it acceptable then to say at the call of the chair? If there are other times that there needs to be a meeting, I don't know if that's acceptable to the board, but if you have those two, that, because I think you have to publish those, right? As regular meetings, and there's no requirement with respect to frequency. So then it would, if that's okay. Counselor Souls, did you?
That's actually a good idea as far as I'm concerned. I think that's a good way of managing it because then you've got all the flexibility you need through the chair's call. And the likelihood of him having to call is slim,
Yeah.
just because of the hospital nature of it.
Good. Any other comments? Counselor Andrews, thank you for participating today. I know you're not feeling that well. Have you got any comment?
I was sitting here thinking of trying to make another time for a meeting of just in case. So your idea of having it called by the chair when needed or when necessary was a great idea. And yeah, I would think I'm on the mend. I've just figured I'd stay away from everyone since I wasn't feeling well.
Good. Good, okay. So that's direction, I guess, to. So there's an official notice that you need to be putting out and do you need a resolution for that, or do we want to wait to the procedure bylaw and then put that up?
The procedure bylaw, you can do it either way. So the Hospital District Act allows you to just establish your annual calendar of meetings. You don't have to embed them in your procedure bylaw if you don't want to. So if you, however you want to deal with it, if you want to look at it on an annual basis, depending on need, or if you want to have it embedded in the procedure bylaw, that's at your discretion. Do you think that that calendar of the meeting in December and the second meeting in March is the regular meetings of the board? If you'd like that put into the bylaw, that can be done. Otherwise, you can just establish your calendar on an annual basis.
I'm good either way. Yeah, go ahead, Counselor Andrews.
I was just reading a little further here on notice of board meetings. We've got to annually in advance make the schedule. So if we were going to have the chair call a meeting, would we run into any issues there? Because technically it wasn't annually announced in advance.
So let's just say we had a clause in the bylaw that said that we'll meet second meeting in March, first meeting in December, or at the call of the chair. Would that cover it all off? And
Yep, so the bylaw allows the chair to call a special meeting at any time.
Okay.
And then there's provisions in there about your notice for special meetings. So your calendar of your regular meetings has to be published in advance annually, but then your regular meetings, so long as you meet your 24-hour notice, that's fine. So basically, if the chair opts to call a meeting at any point outside of that March and December, that would be a special meeting, and we're required, given in the draft bylaw currently, to give 24 hours notice of the time, place, and purpose for the meeting,
at
which is,
least 24 hours.
yeah.
Well, I'm happy just putting it, embedding it in the bylaw then, and we'll deal with it at the, hopefully a February meeting if there's one call. Do I see consensus on that? Generally? Okay, good. So then that takes us down to business item 3 on this report, which is a consideration of a special meeting date in February to review their capital plan. So we don't have any information from them with respect to when they might get us their draft, correct?
Yeah, so it might be worthwhile to look later in February, I imagine, give them as much time as possible. But I think, so there is a discussion point currently around even just on the provisional budget around the projects that have been listed in there that council probably wants more information on without even seeing what the final budget looks like.
Right, yeah, obviously, there's a lot of discussion going on with respect to the CT scanner,
Mhm.
so they might need to modify what they're doing. So then the second meeting of, which day is that? Our second meeting in February? Do we want to tentatively schedule it there? That's almost as late as you can get. 1 day away from the end of the month. Will that give us time to deal with what we need to deal with? Is everybody okay with, is there general consensus about trying to get that meeting for the 27th? Seeing nods around, yeah, okay. Mark it in your calendars, please. Then tentatively, yeah. Okay, I think that takes us through all of the report. Is there anything else in that report that I've missed? No? Okay, then. Oh,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna, so there are a couple areas, so the order of proceedings in business, conduct and debate. They've been largely left blank, because it would be my assumption, and we may cover some of this discussion tonight when we're looking at the procedure bylaw through committee of the whole, to just see if whatever council settles on for typical council, how they'd like to see that appear in this bylaw for the board, whether it be exactly the same or potentially with a bit more flexibility. But yeah, so it might be early right now to talk about what those provisions look like, and maybe more so can come out of committee of the whole this evening.
Any comments?
I'm in favor of harmonizing them. It just actually makes a whole lot of sense so that you don't, it's partly because I remember the era when we actually had a municipal council and a regional council that changed hats and sat at the same table and actually had different protocol as far as, as the procedural world goes, and that's awkward.
Yeah. Well, the act would have been different back then too, so certain requirements of either.
Yeah, there
of
were
either
different
group, yeah.
requirements, man.
Yeah, I'm fully in favor of that as well, is just let them mirror each other, and we'll have we're gonna have an hour discussion tonight on what that looks like, and we'll just bring them in unless we can think of an exception for some reason, but because of our discussion, but I'm good with that. The last thing we had was just a discussion that you and I had just before we started. It wasn't in here, and although the act says in our particular case that the mayor will preside as the board chair, that's if the board, or that's if the council appoints the mayor. So there may be a case where the council doesn't appoint the mayor for whatever reason. And so therefore there would need to be a process for electing the chair and vice chair. And so if the procedures bylaw could reflect that, then there's no hole. I mean, I suspect that most of the time, but what if you had a
Yeah.
rogue mayor and you decided not to put him on,
Yeah.
him or her, then potentially you need to have a process to elect a chair and a vice chair.
Yeah, that's good governance.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can add that as well.
Yep.
Okay,
And then the last, sorry, you got me thinking, the last is just around committees. So the draft bylaw is silent on committees, which many other communities' procedure bylaws do have provisions for committees for their hospital district board. I suspect it's both the size of the committee and the projects underway at the time. Like if you're undergoing a hospital replacement or something, you may want to assign committees to that. But right now, I've left that section out of our bylaw. I just wasn't sure if it was appropriate given the size of our RHD and things like that. But in the same kind of notion, it might not cause harm to include it. Just gives us a little bit more flexibility if you ever need it.
so a clause would be just for a special committee or a standing or?
Understanding or select committees could
I
be,
think probably a select committee would be the most like, because there's a project at the end.
Yeah.
So you select people to sit on it for our size anyway. So maybe let's include that as well. Just a section around appointing select committees. And then there's no errors. And then it wasn't on the front, but it was on the back. And then there's that last little comment about whether or not we want to be remunerated. And the only thing I would say about that is that we've invited external folks to the table. Who, if we're not giving them some, and I'm not exactly sure the status of that, of whether our neighbors are planning to appoint somebody to this board, but at least their expenses should be covered. Go ahead.
I'll just say that it's my understanding that if council members are part of committees or boards, they're already compensated by the band to attend those. They're paid an honoraria or travel.
By the band
By the band.
themselves. Okay, so, and the costs, like, I'm just thinking of the chief from Prophet River. There's some travel costs, some gas and minor expenses, I'm sure, but we should at least be saying that we're prepared to pay those reasonable costs. If we have an evening meeting and they need to spend the night or something like that. Or if they're appointed by the band, is it the same? That's generally what you believe. Can we just ask that question and find out and then bring that information back at the next? I don't feel I need to be compensated for this. It's part of what I do. So the rest are, how do everybody else feel? Same? Councillor Andrews, the same?
Yeah, I'm in agreement for sure.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So I would just offer that the travel expense policy does provide, it does allow for the reimbursement of expenses related to travel for any committee members, or any person, consultant, staff, council, committee members, volunteers, whomever is, it's applicable to all.
Including the hospital board?
Yep, any function of the municipality, essentially. So,
Okay.
and the RHD would be, I think, fall under that. And council has the discretion to apply it in any situation through resolution. What it does not cover is honoraria, so that would be the remuneration piece, is it?
Right.
But if there is a mechanism in place to provide for coverage of expenses.
All right, well, that's in place already then. Just want to make sure that that's. Go ahead.
Just one more question. So a band is members of various boards. And so when they're meeting with other boards and their board members, they rotate the venue or the location of the meeting. And I wonder if that might be something that we would consider, because if it's only 2 or 3 meetings of traveling. Is it fair for Prophet River Board to always have to travel here?
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think it builds partnerships and relationships.
Well, if they appoint a member, we can talk about that. Yeah. I think it's a good idea. Okay, Ms. McIver, have you got all the information that you need? Good. All right, let's move on to the next order of business, which is the correspondence, which is the update, the Northern Health update with respect to the quarterly budget, or mostly budget. Is there anything else that needs to be added to this? Anybody receive for information? Is that generally what we do with this? Because I certainly can't talk about anything on there. I haven't seen the one that was there before. So maybe just receive this for information. Moved by Councillor Dickey, second by Councillor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. There were no additions. There's no budget or agenda questions, no public. Adjournment is in order. I'll adjourn this meeting. Good. Thank you very much.
See you guys tonight.